Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video I'm going to check the LDARC, formerly known as King Kong, tiny GT8 micro brushless quadcopter. In this video I'm going to go over its features, show you how to configure it, and then head outdoors and test it out. The tiny GT8 is available in 4 versions. You can choose between a plug-and-play version which doesn't come with a receiver and a bind and fly version which comes with either Flysky DSM2 or Frsky D16 and Futaba compatible receivers. The version that I've got comes with an AC900 receiver, which is by default configured to work with Frsky D16 compatible transmitters. However, you can also set it to work on Futaba SFHSS protocol, and you can just refer to the user manual in order to see how it's done. The tiny GT8 comes inside this pretty neat box, which you can save for later for storing some of your equipment. It opens up like that, and inside, first of all, we can find the quadcopter, a 2S 380 mAh LiPo battery, the user manual both in Chinese and in English, a set of stickers, extra screws, a USB to micro USB cable which you are actually going to use, 2 sets of extra 1935 propellers, the user manual for the AC900 receiver, and finally this adapter that will help you to charge the included 2S LiPo battery. Since it only features a balance connector, you're going to need to connect it like that. And then on one end you can find a male JST connector and on the other one a 2S balance plug. The GT8 features a tiny whoop style plastic ducted frame with a wheelbase of 87.6mm. It has also a smaller brother, the GT7, which shares most of the components with the GT8 except that it has a wheelbase of 75mm. It uses 0803 9000 kV motors as opposed to the GT8 which is using 0804 7500 kV motors, and also it uses smaller propellers. The GT8 is using 1935 props and the GT7 is using 1535 props. All the other components are identical. On the center we can find an SP Racing F3 flight controller. It comes pre-flashed with Betaflight 3.4.1. It has a built-in 4-in-1 10A BLLES ESC and also a built-in VTX with an output strength of 25mV, and it supports 16 channels. On the front we can find an 800 TV line CMOS camera and also this micro USB connector that will help you to configure the flight controller. And the reason you're getting this dedicated micro USB to USB cable is that not all the connectors are going to fit. So this connector is very slim and you can see that it fits with no problems, but probably the connector that you have at home is not going to be compatible, so make sure to keep this USB cable along with the quadcopter. The receiver is located on the bottom of the quadcopter and shortly I'm going to show you how to bind it. And over here we can find this 2S balance plug, so you just need to insert your battery over here and then you can simply connect these 2 balance connectors, and you can also use other type of batteries. This battery from CNHL fits perfectly on the bottom of the quadcopter, and the only problem is that this connector is a bit too long, so if you are going to use it only with this quadcopter, maybe it's a good idea just to trim the JST connector. You can see you can just insert it like that. You can connect the balance connector and the quadcopter will power up. If you want to use other type of batteries, you can simply remove this part and you can use a battery velcro strap in order to mount the battery on the bottom of the quadcopter. The weight of the tiny GT8 is 49.1 grams, not including the battery, and 68.5 grams including it, so this is definitely not a light 2S whoop. Here you can see how the GT8 looks next to the very popular Mobula 7, which has a wheelbase of 75mm. You can see that it looks definitely much smaller than the GT8. One of the things that makes the GT8 a pretty heavy 2S brushless whoop is that it is using a very heavy frame. The thickness of its frame is about 1mm, so this is a pretty thick plastic frame. Just for example, the thickness of the frame of the Mobula 7 is only 0.5mm. In addition, the plastic parts that are holding the motors are pretty massive as well, and in my experience these are one of the first things that break in case of a crash, and I don't think these ones are going to break easily. And it also features a pretty big bumper on the front, which is going to help to protect the frame as well in case of a crash. So overall it looks like a very durable quadcopter, which is going to make it a beginner friendly one. Binding the AC900 receiver is done by putting your Frsky compatible transmitter on mode D16 and then turn on the quadcopter while pressing the bind button on the AC900 receiver, which is located over here. You can either power it up using the LiPo battery or using the micro USB port. After powering it up, this rapid LED green indication is going to indicate that the receiver is on bind mode, and then just hit the bind button on your transmitter, and this solid green indication indicates that now the quadcopter is bound. Unfortunately, the Frsky version does not support telemetry, so you won't get the RSSI on the transmitter and also not on the OSD. The flight controller of the GT8 and the GT7 does not support Betaflight OSD, but it does feature one. In order to configure it, you will need to power up the quadcopter while pressing the button which is located over here. Then you are going to enter this menu which will enable you to configure the OSD. Moving between the options is done by short pressing the configuration button, and changing an option is done by long pressing it. The first option will enable you to turn on and off the battery status. So you can see now it has been removed. And if you are going to short press this button again, you'll be able to set different types of batteries. So for example, you can set it to 3S LiPo battery by long pressing this option. Now, of course, the battery voltage was reduced. So the default option is 2S, and you just need to leave it this way. Next, you can set up the battery warning. So you can set the voltage between 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6 volts. I recommend to set it to 3.3 volts. Next, you can set the horizon bars. Then you can set the camera mode settings. So you can switch between auto, PAL, and NTSC. You can choose whether to display the timer or not, and you can set the display name. In order to save the settings, you can just unplug the battery and plug it back, or you can just wait for 40 seconds and then the menu is going to disappear. The VTX of the GT8 and the GT7 supports 16 channels, and you can find them in the frequency table inside the user manual. In order to switch between the frequencies, you will need to just short press this button over here, and then the lighting on this LED indicator is going to indicate the channel. Just note that the first LED is not the left one. You can see that now the VTX is set to 5740. So the first color was blue and then green. And in the user manual, it actually first green and then blue. So it is in reverse. The right is the first one and then the left. By short pressing this button, you're going to cycle between all the options and make sure you chose the correct channel. Otherwise, you might have some video interference. The next thing I'm going to do is to go over Betaflight configuration, and then I'm going to head outdoors and test out the GT8. In addition, I'm also going to test it with the Evan Rush 2-inch propellers, which can fit inside this frame. Not every 2-inch propeller is going to fit. For example, the Dalprop 2035 propeller is a little bit too big and is going to touch the sides of the frame, but this one does fit, and it might perform a little bit better using this prop, so I'm going to try it out as well. I hope you will enjoy the rest of this video, and I will see you in the end of it in order to give you my conclusion. So overall, after flying and crashing the GT8, I can tell you that this is probably one of the best 2S swoops a beginner can get. It is pretty easy to fly. You can also fly it around people and also in the house if you have a big house or inside a sport park, since it is pretty harmless. And in addition, its best feature is that its frame is almost indestructible. I crashed it a few times, but still, it is still in one piece. In terms of range, I got to around 250 meters without no problems, and I was limited by the VTX and not by the red receiver. I didn't have a single failsafe, so it performed quite well. The only problem is that when you're flying away from you, the antenna is going to point at your direction, and then the video signal is going to be pretty good, but when you're heading back, the antenna is going to be away from you, and then you're going to have some signal problems, so try not to get too far, and of course, make sure that you have a proper patch antenna. When I tested the Emax Even Rush 2-inch propellers, I can tell you that the GT8 performance was increased, and it felt also faster. The only problem is that the angle of the camera is fixed, so when I flew faster, the camera was facing the ground and the GT8 was harder to control. So I recommend just to stick to the stock propellers and you will do fine. If you have the Even Rush propellers at home, you can give them a try, but I wouldn't get them especially with the quadcopter, and you're getting 2 more extra sets inside the kit of 1935 propellers, which should be more than enough because these propellers are pretty durable and they are safely protected inside the frame. In terms of flight time, I could get around 4 minutes using the included 380 mAh 2S LiPo battery and about 3.5 minutes using the CNHL 350 mAh 2S battery, which is pretty impressive for a 2S swoop, and I can estimate that if you're not going to push the throttle too much, you can get even up to 5 minutes. Finally, if you're debating whether to get the Mobula 7 or the GT8, I can tell you that these quadcopters are completely different, even though these are both 2S swoops. A good comparison between the two is like a bus and a motorcycle, and the Mobula 7 is much more acrobatic than the GT8. The GT8 had some problems doing maneuvers, and when I came from a sharp turn, sometimes the quadcopter just dived. I'm not sure if it's because the high load of the CPU or maybe just because it is just too heavy, but I think that it's a good quadcopter for just cruising around and not for acrobatic maneuvers such as the Mobula 7. So if you are a complete beginner, a better option would be the GT8. And if you're not a beginner, probably you're going to get bored with the GT8 after a couple of flights. So a much better option for you would be to get the Mobula 7, which in my experience is more fun to fly around. As always, I thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it and it was informative enough. If you have any questions about the GT8, feel free to ask it in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the notification bell if you're not already subscribed. See you in my next videos and goodbye.